Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Red Sky Pods. And this is Red Sky Meets, episode 3. And our guest tonight is none other than Alan Thompson, the Newcastle Bolton, Aston Villa, Celtic Leeds, Hartlepool, former professional footballer. We're going to have a bit of a chat with Alan about his career, both as a player and as a coach, and just spend about an hour with him, just touching base on things, sharing a few stories, and listening to what he's got to tell us. So, thanks for coming along, Alan. Very appreciative. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having us, guys.
No worries. So before we get into the meat of it, you've got a book coming out, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done I've done all the audio stuff with the publishers and the author, so it's in his hands now to put it down on paper and see where we go from there. So it'll probably be later in the year, looking for September, something like that, to get it all out in the shops and on audio and what have you, and on different platforms. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Is it an autobiography? Has it got a few footballers' tales in there?
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff in there. It goes from being a kid growing up in Newcastle, Wallsend Boys Club, all the way through to the present day. I mean, lots of my teammates have from over different clubs I've played at have all done books, and I've never really fancied it, to be honest. But I just feel like the time's right now to put my side of the story out there and let people have an insight to what it's like, you know.
Yeah, I'll check it out. That's for sure. I've done it as an audio book. That'd be really good. I've listened to a few autobiographies in the audio book, and yeah, look forward to that. So, kicking off with the football chat now, I don't mind. Just a little bit of a touch base on your thoughts regards the Premier League this year, and obviously the impact COVID would have made on the Premier League. You're obviously still an avid fan. You don't get to walk away from it completely, do you, when you retire? So you keep your eye on it, you watch the games, and you see how things are going. So what are your thoughts on the truncated season and how it's affected the Premier League this year?
I think it's a difficult one. I think with obviously no fans being in the stadium, the closest I could refer to that as being a young lad playing in stadiums for reserve teams. So you'd play at St James's or wherever you were playing, Anfield or wherever, and there'd be no fans in the crowd, and it's difficult. I suppose as a young lad playing for the reserves in stadiums, it was quite easy to motivate yourself. But these guys who are pros, used to playing in 40, 50, 60, 70,000 crowds every week, I'm guessing it's been quite difficult for them motivational-wise. And I think that might have had an effect on certain clubs, you know. Some clubs who really have a great home record, Liverpool being the main one. I definitely think, and even Celtic, their home record over the years, and it's really affected these clubs in a run for a title.
Absolutely. Do you think, obviously, with the spending power and sort of having 2 or 3 players in every position, and the fact that the season's become really intense, has that played to some degree into Manchester City's hands, certainly in the second half of the season?
Well, yeah, they've got a lot of strength in depth, and if you're picking up injuries or you've got people being, you know, not training through COVID or what have you, and you've got that squad and you've got that financial, you know, backing behind you, it definitely gives you a chance over the other clubs in the running towards the end of the season, you know.
Just a quick question for you. Liverpool beat Palace and went top of the table sort of late December, and then the manager started to take to the press to talk about scheduling and intensity and the timings of the games. And it's very unusual for Jurgen Klopp to be that negative. Do you think, as a player, does a manager's demeanour and what he says to the press, does that resonate with the players? Can that change how you feel?
No, I wouldn't have thought it would have much an effect on the players. I think that's more probably Jurgen Klopp going to the authorities, to the FA and the the EPL and the European UEFA, and to have a look at their scheduling. I wouldn't have thought as a player that would have much effect on the mentality going into games. I think that's probably Jurgen Klopp having a pop at the people in high places.
No worries. So north of the border, obviously, I've had a long career with Celtic, but don't need to guess where your affiliation lies up there. Thoughts on what's gone up there this year? You know, with obviously Steven Gerrard doing the job he's been doing, and obviously putting the spanner in the works of Celtic's domination. So just looking at that, what have you been thinking about that this year?
Yeah, I think Steven's done a great job. I think he's been there 3 seasons now, and he's just won his first title. So it just shows you if you give managers a bit of time and give them some belief and give them a bit of backing, managers can turn it around, and that's what they've done this year, Rangers, and fair play to them. But there was a lot of pressure on Rangers to stop 10 in a row, and a lot of pressure on Celtic to win 10 in a row. And I just think Rangers have got the better of them over the course of the season, and rightly so, because they've been the better team.
There's been a clear progression there every year, though, Alan, isn't there? Rangers, been a clear progression under Stephen Gerrard every year, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been steady, and I think the longer they've been there, the more he's stamped on the way he wants to play the game, and bringing in every year, like you say, progressively bringing in better players. And I think that's resulted in what they've achieved this season. And I think going ahead to next season, if Celtic want to compete, they're going to have to invest. Simple as that.
Absolutely. So you're top man at Celtic. You've got a position vacant at the moment. You need a leader. You need a manager in to arrest the Rangers' resurgence. Who are your candidates, and who would you want?
I'm not too sure who I'd want. I think if you look back over the years at both the old firm, Rangers and Celtic, I think predominantly 95% of the time, the managers who come into the jobs, the ones who are successful have got a background and an idea of what it is and what it's about in Scotland. Rangers, Celtic. You look at Celtic, Jock Stein for the first one, Martin O'Neill after that, Brendan Rodgers after that, and then you look at Rangers, Walter Smith, Graham Souness, Alex McLeish. So you look at the successful managers up there. They've got an idea of the background of both clubs and what it entails. So for me, it would have to be someone, or not have to be someone, because it's a choice of Celtic's board. It's got to be someone who understands what they come in, what they're letting themselves into, and what it needs to win the title up there.
I've heard Alan Brazil say he would be in favour of Roy Keane as manager with Martin O'Neill in to look after him. Is that something you think could work?
I'm not sure if Martin would be up for that kind of role. I think Martin's the type of guy that wants to be on the dugout. Could he be the main man and bring Roy Keane to step into the job in 2 or 3 years' time? Is that a possibility? But I'm not sure if Martin would be the man to sit in the director's box and give advice. I think he enjoys being in the dressing room, and I think he enjoys motivating people.
Yeah, would Roy Keane want that as well? I mean, would Roy Keane want that? I'm not sure he'd really want that. Having his hands held like that?
I think if they go in and they're successful and they win back-to-back titles, or they win a double, or they win a treble, and it's understanding that if they are successful, Roy's the automatic choice to step into the job. So yeah, I could see it working, but they've got a new director of football going in, or chief executive going in. And I'm sure that's well into the process now of discussing the next candidate or candidates.
Yeah.
So just before we close on the Scots Premier League, I've got a question for you. Have a look, come up on screen now. What's your thoughts on that?
I can't even see it.
So would you be in favour of Celtic and Rangers joining the Premier League? And you can probably expand a little bit on that. How competitive would they be? How long would it take them to get up to speed, in your view?
Well, there was a lot of talk about it when I was up there from 2000 onwards. There was a lot of talk about it happening, and then it's all gone quiet. Yeah, I'd be a big advocate to get them into the Premier League, and I honestly think, given 2 or 3 seasons, but then why should they walk straight into the Premier League?
Exactly.
Should they start lower down and have to work their way through, like a lot of clubs have? They haven't got the divine right to go straight into the Premier League. But I've got no doubt, if they did start down the leagues, progress and end up in the Premiership, with the back in the Premier League, the finances that are involved, it wouldn't take them long to be competing in the top 6.
I mean, you would have a really good insight into just how big those 2 football clubs are. They're huge, aren't they? They've got everything in place to come to something like the Premier League and grow year on year. The sky's the limit with their fan base, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I knew there were big clubs before I went up there in 2000, but I think until you're part of it, and I was travelling to different parts of the world, America, Australia, Middle East, Far East, the fan base of both clubs is phenomenal. Probably a little bit more so Celtic. So definitely the fan base is astronomical, and it's endless possibilities financially to become a global brand if they're not already.
Yeah, absolutely. So just closing on this season, Alan, just ask you what you think is going to happen in the summer transfer window. I mean, you're on Twitter, we're on Twitter. We see it's silly season and everyone's signing 25 players for this amount of money and that amount of money. In your view, having been in the game and obviously a better understanding of budgets and what have you, is the fact that we've had no fans in the ground and things change, is that going to make the summer transfer window a quiet one? Will we see the types of investment we've seen year in, year out before?
Well, first and foremost, you saying that you're on Twitter and I'm on Twitter is two entirely different things, because you know what you're doing on Twitter and I don't. So, I'm a complete novice. It's my first birthday, I think, last week, so I'm clueless, but I'm just getting to grips with it now. But yeah, looking forwards, I would think what's happened the last 12 months with the COVID and everything that's been going on, the revenue that clubs have lost, I still think there'll be big transfers, but I don't think there'll be in abundance like we've seen in previous summers now.
Just on the final question, there's a couple of free transfers going to be sort of exiting the Premier League. The thought is, and Christian Benteke is one of these players, the thought is they're turning down contract extensions because they think they're going to get big wages somewhere else. Are they in for a little bit of a shock when they go and talk to other clubs about possible moves?
Yeah, I would say so. If you use Benteke for an example, I'm assuming he's on a substantial amount of money at Palace, and if he thinks he's going to get the same or more for another 4 or 5 years, yeah, I think a lot of players will be in for big shocks. They'll be looking for a payday, and it doesn't always work out like that. And different if you're in a run of form, but I think he's had a couple of quiet seasons, so yeah, I think there'll be a lot of players who'll be in for big shocks.
I'm of that thinking too. This is why I asked, and thanks for that response. So moving into the sort of the next section of the pod, this is about your playing career, and obviously between 91 and 93, your playing career starts with Newcastle, which I would be dear to your heart. So tell us a little bit about your Newcastle experience.
Well, I'll talk about it in more depth in the book. But when I left school and joined Newcastle at 16, I had a bad car accident. And obviously I go into a lot of detail in the book about that. So I was extremely fortunate to get back fit, well, to walk again, never mind to get an opportunity to play for Newcastle United. So I was very fortunate, very lucky. And it was a boyhood dream of mine to play for my hometown club. I could have joined Spurs, Man United, Chelsea as a schoolboy when I was 13 or 14, but I just wanted to pull on the black and white jersey and play at St James's Park. So it was an absolute privilege and an honour. I would love to have stayed longer. I would love to have been there for a lot more years. But I wasn't playing. I was a young kid and I wanted to play football, hence leaving and moving on to Bolton.
So in your time at Newcastle, who were the players that you were vying with to get more opportunities? Who were the people that kind of stopped you getting the team?
When I left school, Kevin Sheedy, Evertonian. Kevin, obviously, he was a lot older than I was, but he was a great player for me to watch because he was very similar to myself in terms of he wasn't quick, but he relied on his educated left foot if you wanted. So it was great for me to watch Kevin. Scott Sellers, ex-Blackburn, Newcastle, Leeds.
Yeah. Leeds,
Scott was another one. Scott was another left-sider who he didn't rely on pace. He didn't have pace, but he had a good football brain. So yeah, had a good upbringing and good quality to watch. And good managers as well. The late Jim Smith, who passed away last year. He was a great manager. And then Ozzy Ordiles, obviously a World Cup winner with Argentina, and then Kevin Keegan. So I had 3 great managers when I was there who I enjoyed working with.
I've heard other people say Kevin Keegan's biggest strength was his man management and the way that he made players around the field. Is that a fair analysis of Kevin Keegan?
Yeah, I would say so. Probably a little bit old school Kevin in terms of probably a bit like Martin O'Neill as well. Martin was all about that So yeah, Kevin was a good talker, good motivational speaker, and good at getting players up for it. And I think towards the middle of his Newcastle career and end of his Newcastle career, he was bringing in, I'd left by then, the likes of Alan Shearer, David Ginola, Tino Asprilla, Les Ferdinand. So superstars in European football he was bringing in then. So the players done the talking.
They were brilliant to watch, weren't they? Those players you've just spoken about. We remember the 4-3 against Liverpool. Brilliant.
You don't get the nickname the entertainers for nothing. So, but
yeah,
you know, that season they ran Man United close, but they didn't quite get over the line, which was a great shame because it was a great team to watch.
I think it would have been really good for football if they had got over the line. It would have been something different. It would have been refreshing to see a side that approached football.
I think at that time it would have been, you know, maybe a bit like the Blackburn Rovers story and the Leicester City story more recently. It would have been refreshing for someone else to win it rather than the usual suspects.
Yeah, and the football they played was amazing, wasn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
entertaining.
Even like centre halves like the Belgian Philippe Albert, you know.
Oh yeah, what a footballer!
He'd come out and he'd become a midfielder, and David Batty would drop into the back four, and they just had a great understanding. And I'm not sure if those times will come back to Newcastle, but hopefully in the future it could.
Was it that season the 5-0? They beat United 5-0. Albert scored the chip.
Yeah, he scored the chip. Yeah, so yeah. Great.
Peter Schmeichel's still looking for it, isn't he, somewhere?
Yeah. But brilliant. But I know the fans get frustrated. The fans have been frustrated, and as a Newcastle fan myself, watching it this season, it's been frustrating. But hopefully, with a bit of investment, they can start getting back to entertaining the fans again in the future.
So, are you Alan St. Maxim fan then, from the left-hand side?
Yeah. He's a bit different to me. He comes in on his right foot, but he's definitely positive to watch. Yeah, so he's one that they would need to keep hold of if they wanted to progress forwards, I would assume.
So, do you think Newcastle should have kept on a Rafa? Do you think they should have done more to keep him, or was it the right move to let him go elsewhere?
I'm not too sure. I think he'd done a good job when he was there, Rafa. But he could have had problems with a hierarchy, and he wasn't getting what he wanted, and he could answer that question better than I could, I'm sure.
To be fair, that was the problem towards the end at Liverpool. He was quite keen to have additional responsibility and much more of the say, and I think he wanted things on his terms, and obviously that's not always possible. So, you know, maybe we'll see him back in the Premier League at some point in the future. Say again?
On a big contract there as well, wasn't he? At Newcastle.
Yeah.
Big wages. So.
Yeah.
It's difficult for the club to maintain that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On to Bolton, 93. You signed for Bolton. With a bit of, obviously with a heavy heart, having left your boyhood club and the team that you support. How do you motivate yourself leaving your hometown team, the team that you love?
Well, it was a tough one. It was a tough one because I'd never left home before, lived with my parents and what have you. So it was a big move. But I was impressed with the manager at Bolton at the time, Bruce Rioch, and his assistant Colin Todd, who I knew from the northeast. So it was a club that I knew that was progressing and going in the right direction, and one that would be good for me in my development going forward as a young footballer. And it was a great few years, some great years and some difficult years. But looking back on it, nothing but fondness.
So you're there for 5 years, 93 to 98, 157 appearances and 34 goals. Some spectacular goals. I caught up with a couple of them on YouTube earlier on today. And it is that left foot we speak about, tremendous. Obviously, the cup final against Liverpool was a game where you came and you were absolutely switched on and motivated. I said to you at the weekend over Twitter, it was like Alan Thompson versus David James. Memories of that game, because you were by some distance Bolton's top performer on the day. Did you feel like right from the off that you were up for it? You felt confidence in your own game?
Yeah, we'd had a couple of good cup runs in previous seasons to that, so we fancied ourselves on the day in a one-off game against a lot of people. We had a mixture of youth and experienced players in the team. You know, Alan Stubbs, Jason McAteer, myself being the more younger players, and then we had experience of John McGinley, Owen Coyle, Keith Brannigan, the goalkeeper. So it was a good combination, and it was a good team, and we always fancied ourselves to go up against them, the Liverpools and the Arsenals and the Chelseas and stuff like that. So we ran them close on the day, but we didn't get close enough. But a lot of people say Steve McMahon was the difference on the day, and he was quite unplayable. And it wasn't the first time I'd come up against him. I played in the FA Youth Cup when I was about 1988, 89 at Anfield. And I was playing for Newcastle, and I'll never forget it. He was playing for Liverpool that day, and I think they beat us 5-0. I think he scored 4, so it's not the first time he's caused havoc in my career. Yeah,
I seem to remember that was. I seem to remember that was a real breakthrough game for Steve McManaman, because even though he'd been in the team, I feel that he'd have a good game and then a couple of not so good games, and that was a real. In a cup final as well, that was a real standout performance. I think he really kicked on after that.
Yeah, I think you get that with young players. You get a little bit of up and down and drop the form and a run of form. But I think when you're doing it on the big stage at Wembley in a main cup final, and people are going to sit up and take notice. And I think he really did kick on after that. He did,
yeah.
He was always on the move, wasn't he? And always ready to take a ball and change direction. It must have been an absolute nightmare to mark.
Yeah, it was just his ability to go both ways, and he didn't look particularly quick. You know, he wasn't the stockiest or the muscliest of players, but he definitely had a change of direction, and he could go either way, and he could see a pass, he could see a cross, and he could score a goal. So that's why he moved to play for Real Madrid in the future, because he was world class.
Absolutely. So we spoke about this before we went live, and it would be a disservice not to speak about it now. The ball comes over your right shoulder, and you hit an absolutely belting shot. We spoke about this before, and only a 6'5" goalkeeper saves that. So when you hit that, you must think that's in.
Yeah, it just sat up nice, and even though it was on my right foot, which I wasn't really known for, it just sat up nicely for me to hit on the full. And it got a bit of dip on it, and I just thought I'd got enough, because if you think JMO's 6'5", but then he's got the length of his arm as well, so he's probably about 7'5" more, and he just got enough on it to tip it onto the bar. And I'm not sure of any other goalkeepers at that time would have saved it, but it wasn't to be. But it was, when looking back on it, it was a hell of a save.
It was, and that's how
he was capable of that as well.
Yeah, listen, I went on to play at Villa with him, and he told me that he used to do that every week. Obviously not at Villa, but he must have done it at Liverpool. But he wasn't sure telling you how good he was.
I think at Liverpool he was a tremendous shot stopper, but there were concentration issues at Liverpool. I think that cost him in the end his sort of number one jersey at Anfield. On the same game, talk us through your goal.
Do you know what? I've seen it a couple of times recently on Twitter, so otherwise I couldn't tell you a lot about it. I just remember it coming in and someone flicked it in. I took it on my chest and I had my back to goal, and again it sat up nice. And obviously I was feeling pretty confident because I thought I was playing fairly well. And I had the shot in the first half. But luckily that one come right off the sweet spot and flew into the top corner, and JMO couldn't get near that one. But it wasn't enough because we were 2-0 down. So it got us back into the game, give us a fighting chance. We didn't disgrace ourselves on the day, so yeah, it was nice to score at Wembley, but it would have been better should we have won the game.
I wouldn't begrudge you that, but as it was Liverpool, I'm kind of glad it didn't, if that makes sense, if you know what I mean. So,
absolutely.
So at Bolton, your profile goes up. I'm aware of who you are because I'm a football fan. I'm sure Dave's aware of who you are because he's a football fan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Your stock's rising considerably. Any clubs coming for you that you didn't go to, or prior to going to Villa, was there any other opportunities to go elsewhere?
Yeah, there was a lot of options, an awful lot of options. So, but for one reason or another, I chose to go to Villa. But yeah, it was a big summer for me, and I do talk about it in depth in the book. So yeah, it was, and I thought Villa was in the right direction. Then I signed when they sell Dwight York a few weeks later, which was a tough one to swallow. So
absolutely. I've got a question, re Bolton. So, favourite teammate at Bolton in terms of playing alongside, their work rate and their ability. Who would you single out at Bolton as a teammate that you enjoyed playing with?
Oh, I think Jason McAteer would be a standout, considering, you know, he'd come from non-league football. He played for Marine and then signed for Bolton as a 23-year-old, I think. So it was an impressive rise from what Jason did as a young lad to go on to, you know, play in the World Cup and what have you. So Jason was a standout, fantastic engine, up and down, but he had quality as well. And John McGinley would be another one. John McGinley, his work rate for the team, and his ability to score goals was phenomenal.
He's a real hero out there as well, isn't he, Alan?
Super John
McGinley. Yeah, Super John. Yeah.
Good goal scorer.
Yeah, he even made an appearance, or not an appearance. He even got a song about them on. Was it Max and Paddy, or was it the other one, Peter Kay's other one?
Oh, yeah.
Phoenix Nights. Yeah, he even got on there, didn't he? So yeah, he's a legend in Bolton, John. Yeah.
So on to Villa, 98 to 2000, 46 appearances and 4 goals. How did it go for you at Villa prior to your Celtic move? Did it turn out to be the right move for you? Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it in the beginning. It started really well. I was playing a lot of games and scored a couple of goals, getting a few assists, and then towards the end it just filtered out. And I had a 5-year contract, so it was difficult. So kind of had a little bit of a fallout with the manager, and it wasn't working out. And I'm not one to just sit there and sit in the stands and pick my wages up. I wanted to go and play football. So, but it did start well. I really enjoyed it. Really good club, big club, great fan base, great stadium. But for whatever reason, it didn't work out as I would have liked.
So on to the club where you really enjoyed some success. You speak very fondly of it. On to Celtic, 158 appearances, 37 goals, including a European goal against Liverpool at Anfield. So this is probably the one where we'll get sort of the most from you in terms of your experiences and your thoughts and your memories. So Celtic, how good was Celtic for you in those 7 seasons?
Oh, Celtic was phenomenal. I went there in 2000, and I think they'd lost the league the previous season before Martin O'Neill had gone in by double figures in points. So it was a huge season for Martin O'Neill, and I spoke to him. And I'd spoke to him previously when he'd been at Leicester before I went to Villa. So he didn't need to sell the club to me. He'd already signed Chris Sutton from Chelsea. So I knew he was going to be spending money, and I knew he'd be going in the right direction, and it was something I wanted to be a part of, and it worked out absolutely fantastically well for me. I loved it.
How many titles did you claim up there?
4 as a player, 1 as a coach. So in the first season we won the treble, we won the league, the Scottish Cup and the League Cup. So that was the first time Celtic had won the treble since the 60s. So it was a great achievement.
I always imagine that Martin O'Neill's sorry, Steve. I always imagine that Martin O'Neill's a really driven guy. You know, really, he asks a lot of his players and demands a lot of his players, and probably demands a lot of himself as well. And he's, I believe he's a really intelligent guy as well, Martin O'Neill. Would that have come across to you as players? You know, was he that demanding day in, day out?
He was great, Martin. He was, and just to give his staff a mention as well, his assistant manager John Robertson, who was a great player at Forest, and Steve Walford was the coach. Steve predominantly done all the coaching, and Martin and John just sat back and made decisions on teams and what have you, and the motivational side of it. So yeah, they were all really driven, and like any good manager, they've got a good backroom team. Yeah, so yeah, that was really important.
Question for you: which was a bigger achievement for you, scoring against Liverpool in Europe at Anfield, or scoring against Barca when you played with Celtic? Which one did you enjoy the most?
It would probably be the one against Liverpool, if I'm honest, because I'd scored against them previously, as we've spoke about, for Bolton at Wembley, and then I scored against them at Anfield for Bolton in the Premier League. So I'd scored a few against them, but I'd never really got the winning victory sign over them. So that set us on the road just before half time with a free kick. and then John Archon scores in the second half, and that was a really good Liverpool team. But I think, not many teams go to Anfield on a European night and play as well as we did and win 2-0. So it was a great victory, even though the Barcelona one was magnificent. That got us through to the next round on the road to Seville, really.
Excellent. So whilst we're on the subject of Liverpool and Barcelona and things like that, what would be your top 2 or 3 grounds to have played at, other than obviously the home grounds that you turned up every week for?
Atmosphere-wise, Celtic and Liverpool, Anfield would be on a par. A European night at Celtic Park or Anfield is probably the 2 best atmospheres I've played in. Obviously, there's 62,000 in Celtic Park, and there wasn't that many in Anfield at the time. I thought it was about 45,000 at the time, but obviously they've expanded the capacity at Anfield now. But definitely Celtic 1, Liverpool 2. Yeah.
I've heard or read that players have said at Anfield on a European night, you can't speak to your teammates because they can't hear you because the noise is that loud. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it wouldn't be far off. It wouldn't be far off the mark. And again, Celtic Park, very much the same. And obviously an Old Firm game midweek under the floodlights at Celtic Park's pretty special as well.
So that was my next question. Celtic Rangers, Rangers Celtic, massive heritage, hundreds of trophies between the two, head-to-head, season in, season out. Just what was it like to play in an Old Firm derby?
Difficult to describe. I've got so many good memories and a few bad memories, but on the whole, I'd take, if I would look back on it, I got sent off 3 times, which isn't ideal. But if looking back on it now, I wouldn't change the amount of victories I had against the Red Cards. So I've got more good memories, shall I say, than bad memories, and it's just a bit special. Very difficult to describe as a player. And I often say to people, if you get the opportunity to go to an Old Firm game, doesn't matter if it's at Celtic Park or Ibrox, just get yourself there, get a ticket and go and just sample the atmosphere, because it really is a little bit unique.
Absolutely. So, looking back on your Celtic career, 4 titles, lots of performances, lots of goals, good goals against big teams. What's your favourite memory of your time at Celtic? Because that's the club where you probably, well, without a doubt, you've accomplished your most successes. So what would be the thing that, when you sit back and look on your career, Alan, what's the thing that probably is at Celtic? What's the one thing that comes to the front of your mind?
I think it's probably the first season and winning the treble, and we won it. We won it by some distance. So the gap that we turned over between ourselves and Rangers was a huge gap, and to go on and win the title, and then obviously add the 2 cups that season for the first time in many, many years, and just give the Celtic fans all over the world a huge amount of satisfaction and something to look back on. But they've probably been a bit spoiled the last few years, having winning 9 titles in a row. So, but that was, and the quadruple treble. But that was special for me, winning the treble in the 2000-2001 season.
So your time at Celtic comes to an end in 2007, and next on the horizon is a move to Leeds. How did that materialise, and how did your time go at Leeds?
Well, when I was a kid, I went to Chelsea. So there was a guy called Gwyn Williams at Chelsea who was then director of football at Leeds. So Gwyn obviously mentioned me to Dennis Wise. So Dennis was keen. So I went there on loan for 6 months in January, and then signed the last year of my career for at Leeds, and it was great. Fantastic club. Difficult times. It wasn't the Leeds of old where they were spending big money and, you know, having European Cup runs and what have you. So it was a difficult time, but one that I look back on and really enjoyed.
So looking at the clubs we've spoken about so far, Newcastle, Bolton, Aston Villa, Celtic and Leeds, all of those clubs have got terrific fan bases. And Leeds would have been no different, would it? Leeds are very loyal, aren't they, in terms of the support they give, even in difficult times.
Yeah, we started my second season there. I was captain, and we were minus 15. We were minus 15, and we the first 6 games we just blitzed the games. We won all 6, and you know, we're back to 0 points or +1, and and the stadium was virtually full. And this is in League One, so Elland Road was bouncing and really vibrant. We ended up losing the last game of the season, the playoff final at Wembley against Walsall. But to start the season minus 15, have you added those 15 points on, we'd have won the title. So yeah, great fan base even in League One, and it's great to see them back in the Premier League now, where they belong. Because the fans at Leeds have had a lot of suffering, a little bit like the Bolton fans have had recently, and now hopefully a bit of promotion, go back up through the leagues and get back in the Premier League. Because clubs like Bolton, with a tradition, and Leeds, that's the only division for them to be in my opinion.
Great side to watch Leeds as well.
Yeah.
Sorry,
what do you think of the way they play at the moment? What do you think of Leeds at the moment? How do you view them?
Fantastic. Love the way they play. Love the intensity Basil has got them playing at, and now they're a good team to watch. And there's always goals entertaining, whether it's attacking or defending. So yeah.
Would your view be slightly different, Alan, as a player and as a coach, on the way they play Leeds? Because they are very open as well, aren't they? So I'd imagine from a coaching point of view, having just done a little bit myself, that you'd be okay. We probably need to tighten this up a little bit. But as a player, I'll be thinking this is fantastic. Let's playing as much football as we can. Yeah,
it's always going to be open when you play them. You're always going to get chances, but then you've always got to have the back door shut. When you're attacking, because bang, you lose the ball in possession, counter attack with the pace and the intensity. I've not seen them train, but I've heard a lot of things about the intensity they train at, is how they play at. And that's how you get that intensity on a match day, is training like that through the week.
Yeah.
How would you have felt playing for Bielsa? Would he have suited your game?
Pardon?
How would you have felt playing for Bielsa? Do you think that would have suited your game?
I'm not sure if I would have been quick enough to get into his team. I might have squeezed onto the bench.
Excellent. I've got a question for you. What were your thoughts, feelings ahead of the UEFA Cup final and that Porto Mourinho team?
Yeah, they were a good team. Obviously, they won the Champions League the following season, so it was always going to be a difficult game. But we go into the extra time. We have a man sent off. The heat for anybody who was in Seville that evening, the heat was unbelievable. So we maybe ran out of steam with 10 men towards the end, but we pushed them all away 2-2, and then they score an extra time, and we didn't have a lot left to try and get back in the game. But that was a good Porto team. A lot of people would say that they didn't play the game in the correct manner, but that's how teams play in Europe.
So we've got another couple of questions. One's a statement followed up by a question, and it says, Alan Thompson, Celtic legend. That can't be hurtful to hear that, can it? And then it says, Alan, what was it like playing alongside Henrik?
Oh dear. Probably the best striker I played with, and I played with some good ones. So he was a little bit like I mentioned before about John McGinley. What people, we certainly appreciated in the dressing room was his work ethic. Without the ball, whether that was him pressing defenders, whether that was him pressing deep midfielders, or whether that was him making runs when myself had the ball or someone else had the ball in deep areas, his movement off the ball was unbelievable. Made my job look quite easier. Some of the goals I've seen, it looks like I've made a good pass, but if you look back on it, it's not a good pass. It's Henrik's movement. So let him take the credit. But no, he was something special. Very sad day when he left, but he gave great service to Celtic, and as you know, being Liverpool fans, Kenny Dalglish is the king, and obviously Henrik Larsson's the king of kings at Celtic, they call him. So you don't get that nickname easily. So he was world class. Yeah.
So you finished your career with a 7 appearance spell at Hartlepool. Is that really just playing for as long as you could? Was that situation for you?
What had happened was I was at Leeds and I'd been injured quite a lot, and I was travelling from Newcastle to Leeds most days, and I had calf problems. And Dennis Wise said to me one day, listen, why don't you go to Hartlepool for a month? Just try and get some games, get some match fitness. So I only went for a month and played 7 games in the month, went back to Dennis Wise left. Gary McAllister got the Leeds job. Another guy who you'll know from Liverpool.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And Gary wanted me back at Leeds for the promotion push. And I went back to Leeds and my calf packed in again as soon as I went back. So in hindsight, could I have stayed at Hartlepool and just carried on playing more games? But Leeds wanted me back, so they were my club, so I had to go back to Leeds. But I really enjoyed Hartlepool and played 7 games in a month, which I hadn't done for a long time before that.
So was that the calf injury? Was that one that forced you to retire?
Yeah, I just couldn't seem to get rid of it. And in hindsight, looking back, I could have maybe played on, could have maybe went to Hartlepool, lived in Newcastle, and Hartlepool trained in Durham, which isn't a million miles from Newcastle. But that was when I took the job in coaching at Newcastle with the kids.
That was the next point I was going to make. Went to Newcastle in 2008, stayed there till 2010, doing some coaching. Was that nice to go back there after your career, to go back to the club you loved?
Yeah, it was great to go back and work with some great people. Kevin Keegan was the manager when I first went back. Terry McDermott was there. Then people after that, Chris Houghton, Colin Calderwood, people who were respected. And as a coach, it was a great couple of years for me to learn my trade. And I worked with the 16s, then the 18s, then the 23s, and I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. And it's difficult making that transition from playing into coaching. Some people find it a breeze, some people don't. I still thought I was a player for 6 months, joining in with the kids and stuff. But really, you're not. You've got to turn that corner and become a member of staff.
And then after 2 years at Newcastle, you returned to another one of your hunting grounds. You returned to Celtic for 2 years between 2010 and 2012. What was it that appealed to you to jump north of the border again and go to Celtic?
Well, as I said, I'd done the 16s at Newcastle, I'd done the 18s, and I'd done the 23s, and for me it was just the progression. And then when Neil Lennon got the job, we were good friends, and he asked me if I fancied going in, and to be honest, it was a no-brainer to go back there and become part of the staff.
Okay, excellent. Obviously, Neil's recently relinquished his position at Celtic. Are you still in touch? Have you spoken to him about his situation?
Yeah, just through text. We haven't spoke. Obviously, he'll be taking some much-needed time out now and see where he goes from here. But he's had a great spell, and obviously the pressure of the season been a very difficult time for him with the media and the unrest from the supporters. But I'm sure he'll bounce back. And
just before we move on to your role at Birmingham, Brendan Rodgers was obviously manager at Celtic, and Leicester came in for him, and the Celtic fans reacted quite negatively towards that move. Can you understand why he did it? Did it make sense to you why he did it?
Yes and no. Brendan will have his own reasons. He'd obviously had a few great years at Celtic and won trophy after trophy after trophy for about 3 seasons, I think it was. So he'll have his own reasons, Brendan. Who am I to tell Brendan what to do? I think he's a fantastic manager. He comes across very, very well. He speaks very, very well. And Leicester will do well, in my opinion, to keep hold of him in the coming years.
I agree. He obviously started his career. He was on that Sky programme, wasn't he, with Chelsea, when they did an academy through Sky, and Carl Mangan, I think it was, the guy who got a contract at the end of it. But yeah, he was always destined for coaching, wasn't he? He's got that kind of brain. So it was just interesting. I could see the logic in him going and taking a job in the Premier League, because I think at some point that same situation will be put in front of Steven Gerrard. He won't stay at Rangers until such time as potentially he's reviewed for a possible move to Liverpool, because I know that's what people talk about. Do you think they have to test themselves again in bigger jobs south of the border to really get credibility?
Oh yeah, I don't think I don't know what Stephen's thinking, but I'm sure that's in his thinking for down the line. You know, to be in prime position at Anfield, the years where he had so many great, years as a player. Whether that's now, I don't think it is. I think Jurgen Klopp will be there for a few more seasons. I think with a few additions to the current Liverpool team, Van Dijk getting back fit, I still think that team has got a lot to give in the next couple of years before they need refreshing.
Absolutely. So back to your coaching, just the last 2 positions that we've discussed. Obviously, you went to Birmingham as a development coach, a development manager. Talk to us a little bit about what that role entailed.
It's kind of the link between well, it's your old reserves if you want. When I was a young lad, it would have been called the reserves. So after the under 18s, you would have been a reserve team player. But now it's under 23, so it's all changed. So it's kind of developing the young players to try and get them in a position of mental and physical condition to allow them to step into the first team should the first team require them. And it's a link with the first team where the first team manager will ask who's doing well, who can join in their training sessions. And it's basically what it says on the tin. It's developing the players and getting them ready for men's football.
Is that enjoyable?
Sorry.
Go on, Dave.
Sorry. Now, I was just going to say, where do you stand on that, Alan? Like, the old days of reserve team football and guys, experienced players coming back from injury, and whereas these days it's really just as you said, it's a development stage, an extension of youth team football. I imagine you can see both sides of that.
Yes, I think it is good for them to have that pathway through to the first team, but I also think just the under 23 football on its own doesn't allow them to step straight into a first team and be able to hold their own physically. I think they need to go out to, if you're a Premier League under 23 player, you need to go out to a Championship or a top League One club to get the experience of how physical the games are, how quick the games are, to allow you. I don't know if you know, I've got two young relatives at Newcastle, the Longstaff brothers, Sean and Matty Longstaff. Matty hasn't been out on loan. I think he should go out on loan. Sean went out on loan to Blackpool, to Kilmarnock, and I think it's a really good ground on the under 23 players to get out and play a season, two seasons, which then takes them, especially when they're probably 20, 21, and then when they come back to their clubs after a season or two, if they're not good enough to get in the first team, then the first teams the club needs to be looking to get them out to sell them or free transfers or whatever to get them playing football.
Yeah, they made a bit of an impact when they came in, didn't they? Your relatives. I remember seeing on Match of the Day, and they were talking about what futures they could have, and then obviously the change in the manager, bringing in players must have been quite tough. And I suppose they come to you for advice quite a lot, I would imagine.
I've not spoke to them an awful lot. They've not been playing a lot recently. I spoke to them a good few times when they were first getting in the team and playing. The last time I seen them was before lockdown. Had a game of golf with them. So, but again, they're young lads. But because they've had a taste of first team football, they'll want to be playing first team football. So whether that's at Newcastle United or whether that's them going out on loan or on a permanent transfer, that's down to them and the people who look after them.
And then just to close on your coach, you went to Blackpool for a short period. Did you come away from Blackpool because of the changes in the staff there?
Blackpool was a tough one. There was a lot of animosity between the fans and the players. You know, the last game of the season, the fans come on the pitch, the match got abandoned, and it just seemed an impossible task. So Lee Clark, who's a very good friend of mine, and myself just decided to resign and let someone else come in and have a go at it.
Is that a lot to do with the owners, Alan?
Yeah, it was all animosity. It was all the Oyston family and the Blackpool fans weren't happy. That had gone on previously from when we were there, and it carried on when we were there, and it was very, very difficult to work under those circumstances.
Yeah.
Probably the right decision, because the last thing you need is sort of strife with your own fan base. You know, you kind of need to be unified, don't you? So it makes it very difficult, I would imagine. Yeah. Before we do your team, two things for you, two questions. First one is from one of our viewers, and it is: do you think you deserve more England recognition? He does. He thinks you should have played more than the one time for England. And following up on that, what prevented you from getting in? Was it your competition in terms of the other players?
No, I don't think at the time there was an awful lot of competition in that position, if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, at that period when I did play, I was having a really good spell at Celtic, and we were doing extremely well in European competitions, playing in the Champions League. I just don't know if it was overlooked because I was playing in Scotland, or another player at that time, Chris Sutton, was also doing extremely well and was overlooked, even though he did have a backstory with Glenn Hoddle in the past. Yeah. So that might have had something to do with Chris's side of it. So no, I would love to another opportunity. I only got one cap. I would love another chance to have gone back and actually maybe played in a home game, because the game I did play in was away in Sweden. I would love to have gone back and possibly played in a game where we had more possession, but wasn't to be. I got my one cap, so too old now. I've got to be happy with that.
To be fair, left-hand side was always a bit of an issue for England. They put Steven Gerrard and Paul Scholes there in recent times. And it kind of leads me on to my last question before we do your best 11. Where do you sit on Gerrard, Scholes and Lampard?
Wouldn't mind them playing in my team if I was a manager. I know that. I'd find a slot for all three of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but just talking about the England one there. Jamie Carragher played left back that night. And no disrespect to Jamie Carragher, because he was a great footballer and a great servant to Liverpool. And he's a good pundit now, but in all respect to Jamie, in my opinion, he was a centre half and he was right-footed. Well, he played left back behind me that night in Sweden, so it didn't really give me the opportunity to get in the game or get a lot of the ball. But I'm not making excuses, but it would have been nice to have had an out-and-out left back playing behind me, but it wasn't to be. But Scholes, Lampard and Gerrard fit in my England team any day of the week, yeah.
So pick one. Which one and why? It's the $1 million question, isn't it? It's the one that keeps coming up. Which one?
It is. And I read something today that Rio had said, Frank, if you want to look back on players' careers and who's won what, then it's going to be between Frank and Scholes. But Frank wasn't in the England squad when I was in the England squad, and nor was Scholesy. And Stephen was absolutely outstanding. Even just in the day's training, it was like, I knew he was a good player, but when you see it close up and personal, you realise how good he was. And although he wouldn't have the medal collection that Frank and Scholesy would have, but for me, I'd probably pick Gerrard.
It's interesting because I listened to Frank Lampard. He was talking about that very topic. Someone asked him about it, a bit tongue in cheek, and he said, "All I will say is, when you turned up at Anfield and Steven Gerrard was on it, just forget about it. You're not getting near him. He was too big, too powerful, too strong, and too intense."
Yeah, he didn't have a weakness. He didn't have a weakness, and he was a phenomenal player, phenomenal athlete, and a great leader. So it's no surprise with his pedigree and his football mentality, his football brain, what he's doing at Rangers now, and I'm sure he'll continue to do in the future.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. So that's the player, the career, and the coaching done. Thank you for that. Really insightful, some good information there. Enjoyed that. So it's on to your best 11 of players that you've played with or against. So what was your formation you went with?
I've got this written down, but I've been doing it since I've been doing the book as well, so it's been changing. So
okay.
As of today, I've got two goalkeepers, but I'm going to have to pick one. I've got Peter Shilton and David James.
Okay.
Peter Shilton come to Bolton at the end of his career when I played for Bolton.
Yeah.
He only played one game, I think. So I'd probably go for JMO on that one. JMO would probably be the goalkeeper. So I'm going for a 4-diamond 2.
Okay.
4-diamond 2. I've gone for Didier Gat as a right back. Didier was a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Phenomenal player for Celtic in European competitions and big games. Got Alan Stubbs and Gareth Southgate as 2 centre halves. And I've got
just before you go on. Just before you go on, I recently read Gareth Southgate was really hard defender to play against, very aggressive. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, Gareth would put his head in anywhere, as you can probably tell by the state of his nose. Yeah, he was the first to admit, Gareth, that he was limited in his footballing ability, but he was a real leader on the pitch. And if he needed to put his head in, and he didn't mind getting his nose broken or stitches or what have you. So he was hot on the sleeve stuff. A real true leader. So he'd probably be my captain on that as well. He'd probably be the captain in the 11.
So what does Stubbsy bring to your 11? What does Stubbsy bring that got him selected?
Stubbsy was he wasn't particularly quick. He wasn't quick like Jonathan Woodgate or Bobo Baldi. He had 2 great feet. He could pass it out from the back. He could kill the opponents with one quality pass. And again, he could defend. He didn't rely on his pace. He could read the game. So Stubbsy he would be the biggest moaner in the team. I've never played with anyone who moaned as much as Stubbsy. It was phenomenal. That's probably a Scouse thing, isn't it? So
thanks, Dave.
Yeah. So then at the bottom of the diamond, I've got Stephen Gerrard. Obviously played with him with England. I didn't really want to put him in because I only played with him the once, but I thought, well, effectively, I have played with him, so I've put him in at the bottom of the diamond. There's a lot of responsibility on him in this team because there'll not be much defending going on from the others. So then I've got Stilian Petrov to the right of the diamond. Stilian was a very underrated player. I think when he left Celtic, he went to Villa from Celtic, and I think he proved when he went to the Premiership what a quality player he was for Villa.
Excellent player, yeah. Becoming the captain and a real quality player. And I'm not sure how many caps he got for Bulgaria, but he got an awful lot. So Stilian to the right of the diamond. Then I've got David Ginola to the left of the diamond. And then so obviously David was quality. He had 2 great feet, but I wouldn't want to be Jackie McNamara playing left back because David wasn't going to be running backwards defending. So he just wants to run that way. Plus he supplied the shampoo in the shower for the boys as well, so that was great. Then at the top of the diamond, probably the best player I ever played with, Peter Beardsley. Just a phenomenal talent, just a natural talent. He would see things a bit like a computer. He just functioned like a computer, just sees things before everybody else, and phenomenal talent. Score goals, dribble, pass, defend. So Peter would be at the top of the diamond, and in front of him I'd have Larson and Wayne Rooney. So that's not a bad strike force, Henrik and obviously Wayne Rooney. So that team with Beardsley in behind would score goals. Yeah,
absolutely.
Got some ability, that team.
Yeah, there's some decent subs as well. So
go
on. John Hodgson, phenomenal player. John, great goal scorer, great to play with. My mate Lee Clark, my mate from Newcastle, went to Fulham. Paul Merson at Villa, great talent. Nakamura from Celtic. The Celtic fans will know who I'm talking about. Nakamura, phenomenal left foot, phenomenal talent. Benito Carbone, Sheffield Wednesday fans will know him. Villa, obviously. Lubo Moravcik. And not a lot of people will know Lubo apart from the Celtic fans. But Zinedine Zidane said he was the best player that he ever played with. And if you think of the players that Zidane played with, that's some accolade. Yeah, so Lubo was phenomenal. Chris Sutton and Jason McAteer to finish that off. So that's my bench.
Not a bad bench, that is it, to turn to.
Not bad, that.
I've not made the bench, unfortunately. So
left yourself out, Alan. I can't believe you've done that. So just before we close, and it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. So thanks again for making your time available to us this evening.
No problem.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a real enlightenment. So I've enjoyed talking to you. Just give us the name of your book and the details on that, and when it's due out again.
The book will be a Geordie boy. Hopefully get it out for September. So it'll just be about me growing up as a kid in Wallsend, to the car crash. That's phenomenal story on its own, and then onto all the clubs I played for. Talk about every club, from Newcastle to Bolton, Villa to Celtic to Leeds to Hartlepool, the England cap. and then life after football and some of the ups and downs from when you finish to the present day. So it should be an interesting read, hopefully.
So have you got anything in the pipeline football-wise at the moment, or are you?
Pardon?
Have you got anything in the pipeline football-wise at the moment?
No. At some stage, I'd like to get back in some capacity. I'm living in the northwest at the minute, so there's lots of clubs around, and hopefully when it eases off a bit, something might appear that appeal and get me back involved, because I love getting out on the grass. I love coaching, whether it's kids or players, senior players. I feel like I've got a lot to give, so I'd look forward to getting back involved in some capacity, yeah.
Well, I sincerely hope that happens for you, because you speak very well about the experiences, and I'm sure you've got an awful lot to offer. So once again, Alan, thanks very much for giving us an hour of your time this evening. I know you're a busy man. It's been a pleasure. Before I speak to Dave, I want to say that. Stay safe, and best of luck with your career going forward, pal.
Thank you. And stay safe, everyone, and thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Alan.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alan. Thanks ever so much, mate.
Thanks a lot.